Yo, I'm Godin and I'm developing a game in solo, and this month I've been working seriously on the story and lore of Silk Road project, and the main character got a complete redesign. Even though the story isn't the central focus of the game, it's still important. It serves as a thread that gives direction to the player and provide a goal to strive for. The story and the world needs to be interesting enough to motivate the player to keep going and care about reaching the end. Up until now, I mostly had a rough idea of the story, a kind of global summary. But since my main goal right now is to release a playable demo, I knew it was time to sit down and dig into the details seriously. I broke this narrative work down into 3 parts. First, the macro story, the world's context, the conflicts, the mythological and political stakes. Then the character work, who they are, what they want, how they interact with each other. And finally, the narrative content of the demo. Which scenes will be playable, what dialogues will appear, and how it all fits into the gameplay. I want the story to support the player without ever getting in the way. This isn't a visual novel, gameplay remains the core of the experience, and I know writing isn't my strongest suit. That said, even just a few well-placed lines of dialogues can add a lot. A handful of conversation can really help bring characters to life and make them more relatable. I do plan to include a few cinematic sequences in the final game, but they'll be rare. These scenes take a ton of time and resources, and as a solo dev, I have to stay realistic. And again, since the story isn't the core of the game, a cutscene doesn't bring the same added value it would in a more narrative-driven game. I mostly use cutscenes for short exposition moments, and I'll try to keep them as brief as possible for pacing reasons. That said, writing even just a bit of dialogue helped me connect more deeply with the characters. Now, when I animate them or place them in a scene, I know exactly what kind of energy they are supposed to bring. Now that I understand my characters better from a narrative standpoint, I decided it was time to completely redesign the main character visually. The design I was using up until now was over 3 years old. It was one of the first visuals I made for the project, back when I barely knew what the game was going to be. But now that I'm sharing more visuals online, on social media, through GIFs and soon in trailers, I wanted the main character to have a more finalized look. I came back to the drawing board with a clear goal to find the right balance between streetwear influence and more traditional clothing, which is the artistic direction I want to pursue for this game. In the original design, I really like the upper body, so I kept the short, oversized bomber jacket, but added fur around the hood to give it a more nomadic, rugged vibe. The lower part of the outfit, though, wasn't working. There were too many conflicting lines going on, so I redesigned the pants with a looser shape at the bottom. And while I kept a lot of the detailing around the waist, I tried to simplify the design and make it feel less chaotic. I also added small decorative elements like trinkets and ornaments to bring in a subtle Asian influence without lying it to any one real-world culture. In the end, with the puffy jacket on top and the wide pants at the bottom, the character now has a stronger, clearer V-shaped silhouette, which feels more striking and memorable. And the last major change is, of course, the head. To be honest, the original face just wasn't working. I designed it with the intention of editing vertex normal for shading, and that led for some topology choices that didn't really suit the style I wanted. So this time I went with a more traditional sculpted approach, rather than modeling it flat. And I chose that method because I had an idea for how I wanted to handle the shading in-game. Since I'm using a cel shading style, rendering faces is always tricky. A basic toon shader applied to a standard face mesh usually looks flat or just off. In the first design, I tried modifying the vertex normal directly to control the shadow, but that method is limited by the mesh topology and it's hard to manage subtle details. So I went with a different solution. I hand-painted the face shadow mask in a texture across 4 lighting angles. Each shadow version is stored in one of the RGBA channels, And since the UVs are symmetrical, I only had to paint the right half of the face. Then, in Unreal Engine, I calculate the angle between the character's head and the main light source, and I dynamically switch between the shadow masks. The result is that I get complete control over how shadows look, regardless of the model geometry or topology. If I wanted to, I could even create new sets of shadow masks for different facial expressions, like angry eyebrows or wrinkled nose. So this is the final high-res version of the main character. Hopefully, it's the last time I redesign her, because I spent way too much time on this character. Actually, this isn't even the first time I redesigned her. Before I ever started posting devlogs on this channel, the main character had already gone through multiple versions. It's fun to look back and see the evolutions. Who knows, maybe I'll be able to recycle some of those oldest designs for guest characters or background NPCs. And that's it for this devlog. I hope you enjoyed seeing the new design and learning a bit more about what's been going on behind the scene. If you like the video, feel free to hit the like button. It really helps me to get the project in front of more people. And if you want to follow the development, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for future updates. And most importantly, if the game looks interesting for you, you can already wishlist Silk Road project on Steam. I've dropped the link in the description below. Thanks again for the support, and I'll see you in the next one.